Welcome back to episode 12 of the Strength Connect podcast. In today's episode, I was joined by Doris. Ryan is a highly respected natural bodybuilder and raw powerlifter who has made a significant impact in both disciplines. With a unique combination of strength and aesthetics, Ryan has excelled in the competitive arenas of both bodybuilding and powerlifting. Beyond competition, Ryan is also an online coach, speaker, and content creator. He shares his knowledge on training, mindset, and personal development, inspiring others to pursue their own fitness goals. His philosophy emphasizes not only physical growth, but also mental fortitude and emotional intelligence, making him a well-rounded athlete and mentor within the fitness community. This podcast is brought to you by VPA Australia Supplements. If you'd like to save 10% off your next order, you can use my code Hayden10 at checkout, or alternatively, the link in the show notes.
Cool. Can I ask, how'd you first not know of me? I mean, it's always crazy when people from everywhere can see some of the work you've done. I guess how'd you, or a mutual friend we have, or how'd you sort of bump into me?
Yeah, so I had another guest on the show from Data Driven Strength. And
Uh,
yeah, so those guys, they had a few recommendations in terms of different guests to have on. As you know, it's, running a podcast. One of the hardest things I've found over the last couple of years is not producing the content. It's not marketing the material. It's not planning for episodes. It's purely just outreach, finding the right guests, getting in touch with them, because oftentimes they have multiple email addresses. Sometimes they'll just have contact forms on their website, or they won't have any contact information. It's hard to get in touch via Instagram. People are busy. So, keeping some consistency to some extent with your episodes, and making sure you're not just plucking anyone and everyone who wants to have a platform. You got to make sure, obviously, that they're with this podcast. It's all about trying to provide evidence-based information from some of the best minds and thought leaders in the industry, not only the health and fitness industry, but also just like the business of fitness. But as I say, we don't want anyone and everyone, so we take some careful consideration in who we do get on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can't get everyone that you want at the same time, so it's
Yeah.
it's kind of pull and pull, push and pull. So cool. Glad I made it. Glad I'm here, man.
I emailed Jeff Nippard and his team got back to me. I emailed Lane Norton, and Lane actually, I think he charges $1,000 an hour or something. He quoted.
Lane was so I know Jeff, though we've only met very briefly. I've known him throughout the years. Lane was my mentor coming up. So I actually really learned everything I know through Lane, and I lived close to him for many years, and it was really good to learn a lot from him. He's correct to charge $1,000. I've never seen anyone in the industry quite like him. He's amazing. His
Yeah.
time, if he gives you an hour, it's worth it. Like just
Yeah.
what you'll learn, it's quite amazing. I've learned so much from the guy, and I have nothing but positive things to say about him in terms of how I've learned how to do business and structure business. So yeah, Lane will charge you. Lane will charge you.
I think I said this to Jack Radford Smith in one of the episodes. We were talking about Eric Helms as well. So I've had fortunate to have Eric on a couple of times so far this year. And some of the most intriguing conversations with him, but also I find to keep pace with him as well, the way his mind
Mhm.
operates and bounces between ideas and
Big
thoughts.
time.
Because
Big time.
you have to think consciously about what he's saying and your response. But you can't get lost or sidetracked in kind of what topics you want to talk about or get to as you
Because Helms is gonna go where Helms wants to go.
and
Yes,
it's all interlinked, and he brings together
absolutely.
everything. He's got such an integrated understanding.
He is an I've always thought of Helms more as a creative and an artist. He's a scientist for sure by method, but by process he's a creative and an artist. The way he thinks, the way he builds ideas, the way he puts things together, he works more like a musician in my opinion than he does a scientist. You know, so it's beautiful the way he gets the information across. It's just harmonic. It's beautiful.
And I understand you've had a fair bit of opportunity to collaborate with a lot of these guys, even John Meadows as well, a number of different
Oh
expos
yeah.
and talks. Rest his soul.
Beautiful soul, man.
Beautiful
Yeah.
man, and very passionate about the bodybuilding world and hypertrophy and strength training. So, over the years, who are some of these more inspiring or influential people that you've had the opportunity to network with, and kind of what have you learnt from these individuals?
Well, I've met all my heroes, and I don't know if you know the saying, don't meet your heroes. So I've and it's disappointing. It's very disappointing, you know. You find that
They're all real humans, and
amen to that. They're
they
just
bleed, they
people.
cry.
They're just people. They're just people. You know, you can really work up these ideals for how people present themselves and how people package themselves. And then when you meet the person, I'm not saying that they're terrible people. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
But they're ordinary, right? The way they so for instance, like one of the most recent interactions I had last year, Mark Bell asked me to come on and be on his podcast, a very popular podcast he has. And I'm gonna this is a very American reference. It reminded me of the movie Scarface. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the movie
yeah,
Scarface.
yeah.
But there was a moment where Scarface went from just sort of like a street guy immigrant to being like the kingpin. And there was a specific meeting that he had to have with kind of like the top drug dealer. And he only had like 10 minutes with him, right? And he had to really make an impression with him. And that's what it's like with a lot of these guys. And then when you have your sort of your 10 minutes with these guys like Mark Bell or something, you'll notice the strangest thing. Like I noticed like the way Mark Bell would sit down, he sat like a normal man. You know, like, and you say, oh, he takes breaks like the rest of us for 10 minutes. Or he'd ask you a simple question. He said, hey, you want to just try this protein shake, right? He's just another guy trying to sell his stuff, seeing what people think, you know? And it's not when you see it, you realize it's not that deep what these people are doing. I think what I've realized about these people that I've met and worked with, and I've been very fortunate to work and be around a lot of them over the years, is that one, they're normal people. So if you're looking for sort of this fantastical ideal in any human being, what you'll get at best is just a normal person who has a great amount of dedication to a specific craft, and a lot of talent, a great deal of natural talent. But outside of that, you know, it's the strangest thing. So one of my old business partners, Ben Askro, he told me the first time he worked with Lane, the first time he had a meeting with Lane Norton, this was back in Lane's PhD college days or something like that. He said, you know, they just were talking and something there at the hotel, and then he microwaved his food in a styrofoam container, you know, and it's just like these things that, you know, you would think. So it's not Lane or anyone else. It's just when you meet these people, you just it's like you would never see, right? They sing in the shower like people when you're around them and when you're traveling with them, and they speed like people. They're ordinary people. And I think once you see how ordinary they are, it inspires you, an ordinary person, that you can do it as well. So I think if there's anything that I've gotten from being around all those people, John Meadows, all of them,
Mm.
that they're regular dudes, and they just do it consistently, and they do it at a very high level, and they do it for real. So that's it's simple but powerful at the same time, you know, to realize I can do it too. You can't, in some strange way, you can't be what you can't see. And when you see it in plain sight, it inspires you to be like, I can sort of do this too. So
Puts it all in perspective.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Like one of the previous guests we had on the show, Luke Tullich, you seem to have this, you spend a lot of time thinking about different elements of psychology and motivation. And you have had some deep chats with a number of different podcast hosts that I've listened to. And a lot of what you kind of focus on is similar to Luke, is around, values. And for instance, finding those four things that you want to, those baskets to put your time and energy into, and really, I guess, knuckling down on those things. And um, I think one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is with your bodybuilding in 2018, you said that you kind of fell out of love or passion for the competitive side of bodybuilding. Now, I was actually going through Spotify, listening to all the different podcasts you've been on, getting a bit more of an understanding about you as an individual. But I also came across your Spotify playlist, and I saw that 2024 there was another prep. You were undertaking another prep. So 6 years down the track, undertaking your another bodybuilding preparation, I guess, have you conjured up that love again for the competitive side of the sport? Or is there still, that you really love your training, really love your dieting, but you've kind of still got some gripes around the nature of competitive bodybuilding at this point in time, particularly in the natural space?
Yeah, well, to be clear, I don't have any gripes with it.
Yeah, right.
I think the biggest issue that I always had with it was sort of the promise of all the fruits of your labor.
Sure.
I think one of the biggest things that young competitors go through, and I see this in my own coaching, is you go through a prep and they start getting more confident. And I got this one guy right now, he's 3 weeks out. And he didn't start very confident, didn't start, he was always complaining about how flat he was and this and that. And now he's seeing it. And now he's like, I'm gonna win this thing. He's got his mojo up and now he's feeling confident. I've won shows, and I don't think you win anything. I think that's my big gripe. It's like there's really nothing to win, like it's something in yourself that you want to prove through the preparation. I think the preparation really is the victory. It's these sort of habits and downfalls that you've always had in yourself, and you're looking to sort of overcome that in the preparation for something sort of greater in the end. And I think the thing that I've always just sort of had an issue with was sort of the promise of it. So this year, I've been really getting back into, preparation for bodybuilding, great bodybuilding. But I wouldn't say it's a preparation for a contest. I sort of found myself this year, spont it just happened. I just started again. I just started prepping. I don't have any interest in competing, really. I don't have any interest in doing it for a show. What I imagine what it will be is, when you see those guys on Instagram and you're like, how does this guy stay in shape year round? How is this guy in shape all the time? I think that's what I'm basically heading to. I think I'm just essentially trying to turn into one of those guys who just has decided to more or less go vegan, right? I've tried to live my life uh normally. I've tried to live my life, with friends and go out to eat and things, but I'm not interested. I'm not interested in their food. I'm not interested in the hours that they sleep or wake. I'm not interested in I've never been interested. That's why we're bodybuilders, right? That's why we
Yeah.
all have always been a bit outsiders. So I I can't let a panel of judges or a show or a federation's reward determine what I want to do with my life. I myself, with or without a show, am a bodybuilder, and that's what I'm gonna do. So I just have been bodybuilding like a motherfucker again, dude. Just for no reason, for no cause. Just that's what I'm gonna do. And if there's no show, then I don't know. What do you want me to do? There's no show. But I always feel that there's some point where you have to take it too far, right? Think about a game like, let's say, um, like rugby is very popular down there, for instance. I'm sure one day, like it was very popular. And then one guy got really mad one day and came out with this crazy Aussie rules football and got all aggressive. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure it happened in one moment, somebody just had to take it too far and it gets really extreme and competitive. And I feel like when you're dealing in the realm of competition, man against man, there is a sort of warlike element underneath it. And I think it feels great. I think it feels awesome to go rip heads off and all that. But at some point, I just love the method, truly, more than any of that. I love the method. I love the method. I love it feels like I've rinsed my hands every day. It feels like I've showered every day when I can say, I hit all the macros I wanted to hit. I hit the training. I hit the cardio I wanted to hit. So I've kind of moved it into a weird sense of early retirement and just I'm just sort of doing it for myself and for Instagram at this point. Honestly, I don't know what else to do. I just don't want to get
Yeah.
on stage. I don't want to compete against anybody. And dude, when I competed, I'm telling you, I would have the lineup. Who's doing the show? Who the picture of the guy? I'd study the guy. I'd find I'd do what a competitor should do,
Yeah.
and I obsessed about making sure I'm gonna win, and that's how I won. But I don't have the strength to do that. But I have all the strength to go and train like a madman to nail my macros. So I'm just expressing what I want to express now, and I personally think that it'll give me some of my best bodybuilding ever. It's like I don't know if you have children or are familiar with children. They'll do anything up until the point where they start maturing and then they get a bit shy, right? So I
Yeah.
sort of feel like now with taking away the element of an observer, of a judge, it's like I get to play with my toy in my room alone, how I want to, at my own discretion, at my
Sure.
own level of intensity. So it's kind of just, if in some weird ways, removed pressure and identity from a thing that I just purely love to do. So yeah, the stakes are much lower and the reward is nothing at all, other than I just get to fucking tear it up. And
And it's
that's
pretty
what I want.
funny, isn't it? Because some of these federations, like the particular ones that I've competed with, like A and B, they have like a theme round where everyone dresses up. You have, like, for instance, with classic physique, there's more emphasis on posing and less emphasis on conditioning, depending on what the judges are looking for, depending on
Yeah.
what the head judge thinks. And I
Yeah.
think you mentioned before, it is very much like a beauty pageant. So I think in terms of the longevity of participation in the sport as a quote unquote bodybuilder and not like a competitive athlete, I think it really comes back down to how much you enjoy the training, right? The nutrition and all of those lifestyle variables that contribute to progression over time, regardless in the eyes of a judge whether you're
Yeah.
best on stage or not. So I think as you say, you need to be in it for the right reasons, don't you? This sport.
Absolutely. And I think that was also why I took that foray into powerlifting for so many years. It reminded me of a actual sport. It reminded me of, it felt like there was a fourth quarter as we got to deadlifts. It felt like there was a halftime as, between the benches, and it felt like a sport as opposed to bodybuilding. I love the pageantry. I love the stage. I don't dislike it. But my passion for that in particular, for losing months of my life to just be a shredded skeleton, that extreme is kind of gone from me, at least for now. But the extreme to be a bodybuilder over years and years and years has not. So I imagine I'll do something similar to what Michael Hearn has done. Just look phenomenal and just
Yeah.
live your life until you ride out to the sunset.
Well, there's a lot of great influencers online that don't have or aren't competitive bodybuilders,
Absolutely.
great physiques, and they can market
Hmm.
themselves well. So I don't think you need, and probably a lot of the time, those that do are more passionate about the actual being on stage and competing, uh, aren't as likely to put themselves out there because the time they put into the content creation is likely going to be more devoted towards training and other factors that'll
Yeah.
enhance their physique. One of the things that a lot of people don't talk about is just how expensive this sport is of
I've
bodybuilding.
been hearing that a lot. I've been hearing
Yeah,
that a lot. Everyone's been telling me that lately.
ridiculous. Yeah,
I
and
I
it's
was always I was always very lucky. I always had sponsors very early. Even as an amateur, I had sponsors, and I've always had help. So
yeah,
uh it's gotten more expensive over the years, I've heard, huh?
yeah.
Dang.
So Jake is the one that recommended you from Data Driven Strength, but I think he's doing his first lineup of comps in the next few months towards
Yeah.
back end of the year. Um, but we were talking about this, and for females in particular, getting their hair and makeup done can cost thousands of dollars per show, and then entry fee. So registration to the organization might be 150, $200. Um, Entry to each category, another $200. Additional categories, you got to pay for stage photography. Now they're making reels. There'll be professional editors for Instagram
Yep.
and social media.
Wow.
You
Wow.
can
Wow.
buy jumpers and merchandise. So it really is. It's big business. The tanning as well. So yeah,
I mean, I get you. You have a business. I have a business. You got to have something, right? You got to have something that's business. I always, I really, it's like if you look at let's say like Christianity, right? The material is free, or look at any education. The book, book knowledge is nothing. You can go to a library and read all the knowledge you want. But if you would like all the accessories, right? If you would like to feel heralded in your community because you know this knowledge, if you would like to feel like a member or plugged in, and don't get me wrong, these federations have made me me. If it weren't for these organized federations, we wouldn't have be having this conversation. They really are centered to what we do. But I think, you know, if you admittedly feel satisfied in the time that you've spent there, there's nothing wrong with helping other people like Jake, right? Helping other competitors still get to the stage. I still love it. Still want to be there for a show, still want to go, but me myself, I've won shows and then you can break even, and it's not about the money. It was never about the money. But at some point you got to say, well, I do love this, but I've got to make sure that I'm balancing the pieces of my life because a show asks for all of you and gives back, at
Some of
least in the
you.
organization, if on the pro level a little bit, but on the amateur level, really just confident and belief in yourself and whatever the judges, help people reinforce in themselves. But the trick is you can do it all on your own, you could really and truly do it on your own. So
I always say the first competition that you do, I think the person intrinsically grows a lot through the confidence they gain out of and
big
developing the
time,
resilience. I think
big
if you
time,
do one comp in your life, I think a lot of if for the right person, a lot of the
big time.
values that you develop as an individual, you'll carry through work, relationships,
Absolutely.
family. I think where you go from there, it becomes more of a for me, kind of self progression. Just to obviously, when you're under the lights with the tan and that, it's easy to compare against previous seasons and see, where you've improved or progressed. And obviously, I think you get caught up in the whole fanfare at the start of doing competitive season after season, but you kind of come to realize that I think spacing out your competitive seasons to give yourself enough time to grow and develop and improve is really important.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of a phase that a lot of people don't get to, is getting to that space to develop and improve. And I think that's the question I'm trying to answer right now, is what does develop and improve actually look like, right? Generally, when you see people taking risk or trying to find new information or new answers, it's always through the study of biomechanics, kinesiology, physiology, or whatever people are doing in the lab, right? The lab, you know how this works. It essentially works like there's this idea that we've been hearing about these meatheads, sort of a trend that they've been doing, and we're going to take it into our lab, try to replicate this and verify it to see if these long length partials are correct, or see if creatine monohydrate works, right? It's like we in the field fuck around, find out, and then they verify. And it's a beautiful method. Not everyone has a huge scientific community behind them, and I'm very grateful that we do. It legitimizes us, if
Sure.
I would say, if anything. Uh, but I'm sort of in a weird space. Are you familiar with Walt Disney? Walt Disney, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I've been learning about great figures throughout history lately, right? Probably the most popular one has been Jesus Christ. I've been reading about, but Walt Disney is, I wouldn't say a close second, but he's impressive. He's really impressive. This guy, Walt Disney, he not only, started this whole children's entertainment cartoonish type thing, which is, a massive industry. Um, he started this sort of idea of these interactive lands, these resort worlds with rides and roller coasters. And there was a bridge in his career when he came up with this Disney World, Disneyland idea. So he was doing all these cartoons, movies, Cinderella, yada, 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 yada. And then he got liberalized, I would say, right? He had the studio out in California, and he was an old school guy, and his workers wanted rights, and they wanted to make changes on campus, and he was just this old his like depression era brain couldn't understand that people wanted change. And so he more or less just left the company for a while. He stopped doing movies, right? It changed, the whole company changed. And during that time that he was away, Walt Disney basically just locked himself in his home and built model trains for years. He just would dig up dirt around his home, and he didn't know why. He just did it. He just started building all these crazy things around his home. And then the famous artist Salvador Dali came and visited him some years later and saw these trains and the precision and amount of detail he put into the land and reworking the land. And he said, "This is too great of an idea to just be locked up in your room alone." And so out of this, he birthed Disneyland, Disney World, right? Out of this sort of hiatus, out of this sort of time away. And I feel like in our method, play is not very encouraged, right? It's very discouraged, if anything, right? We know what works. We know what rep ranges work. We have so much information on what works. Very rarely do you see anyone actually get to the point where they master the method, where they've won shows, they've won the powerlifting competitions, and what's next for them, you know? And I'm sort of in a phase with myself where I want to find out some new stuff. I want to try some new stuff, you know? And if I were competing, I wouldn't really be allowed to do that. I would have to be placed within the constraints of timelines and have to do this and have to do that. But I'm just not interested in that right now. I'm interested in just running wild. My favorite rapper, J. Cole, he says this line I love. He says, "You have to play the game to change the game," right? The only way that you can change the game, sort of like Jeff Nippert is doing right now, let's say, is that Jeff's done this. Jeff's done it all. You know, he's now at a point where he's asking questions. And so I feel like I started this in 2008, I would say, and after some years you start having questions yourself. So the things that I'm coming up with and the things that I'm trying to mix and match, they'll grow and they'll be popularized and they'll come out as legit. The scientific community will make them more, solidified, or they'll be illegitimate. And either answer is good, whether it's good or bad. It doesn't really matter to me. But I think there's a fun in that. It's a novelty to that. It reminds me of when musicians can play every song in the book and eventually they want to improvise on their own, right? They want to create their own music. They want to write their own original compositions. And so there's very little space for that in the world of strictly competing. And so I'm there. I'm trying. I'm trying to kind of develop a Charles Glass-like approach to my bodybuilding and having my own ideas. And these all come from, like I said, good sound education, great mentors, a very strong knowledge of the sciences and how things work. So I think if you have a knowledge of foundations and how the whole thing works, you can start sort of having fun again. So that's kind of where I'm at. I've made a return to the basics, but just having a blast, trying things I never would have been allowed to try before, and it's been fun, and I think it's gonna work. Personally, I think it's gonna work. So
So you've got a background in marketing. So you've got a bachelor degree in marketing, master's in business administration.
yeah, I have another master's in international management as well too. I got them concurrently. Yeah.
So when you say kind of, you know, going back into trying new things, powerlifting, business, marketing, what is it? What kind of things are you kind of turning your hat to these days?
Okay, so business. I'll stick on that topic. So for business, I have always had a very it, I've always had an interest in how people work, right? I've always had an interest in psychology and how humans interact and why we do certain things. And Abraham Maslow's work has been like really on motivation and why we get motivation has probably been the most captivating to me, and a lot of Carl Jung work. But a lot of it to me has been, kind of behind the walls of academia. And a lot of what they're doing, I believe, in psychology is in business, right? It's like mind control 101. When I was younger, I thought it was just the coolest thing that you could convince someone to act, or even like a musician, you can get someone to dance or anything, or if you can get someone to do something, to clap their hands, if you do a big bicep, anything, right? To get a response out of a person it's huge. It's huge for me. So one thing that I've been doing now with business and now with marketing is that I've been sort of really learning about the spiritual idea lately of this idea of presence. They say stay in the now, be here in the now. And I'm interested in what people are sort of doing with their presence. From a marketing perspective, people are taking their attention span, their awareness, and they're sort of giving it to podcasts or giving it to social media apps. And just handing it over in hopes that you give them something good in return. Most of the time, they're just getting a lot of junk food, right? A lot of crap. Uh, One thing I've really been interested in lately is if people are willing to give up what I feel is the most precious thing, your attention, your awareness, your life here on earth. When you take your last breath, everything remains in form, but your attention sort of fades. In business, I've been interested in what are people looking for in giving up their presence? What really, right? To really answer the question, what are people looking for? Is it information? Is it their interest? But to get attention from a person is a great gift, right? Sometimes we're very focused on, let's say, Sam Sulek. Many years ago, it might have been Ronnie Coleman, right? For some odd reason, we always rotate the symbol of what's most important to us. I learned this sort of tying it all together in Christianity. If Christ is sort of the ultimate symbol, let's say for 2,000 years to many people on earth, what does that symbol represent, right? Something eternal. And people constantly give their attention and focus to that symbol, to that story over and over and over. I've been interested in trying to make something like that, not like on the level of Jesus or something like that, but something where you can feel like you're just not posting just to post, not posting just to make money. But if I were to get the attention of 2,000 people, really and truly, how do I recycle that so I feel good, in what they did? Did they come to me for a laugh that day? Did they come for me for whatever? So from a marketing perspective, I've been seeing it more as a pure spiritual exchange. What do you get when you look at me? What do I get when I look at you? And hopefully it's fair and I leave you better off, in that exchange. Obviously, I have a service with coaching. So with coaching, that's a whole different thing, right? We have an active relationship. But I really have been feeling a little more righteous in what I want in marketing, what I want people to, if someone's going to give me 5 minutes of their time, 7 seconds of their time, I would like to make the best of it, right? Life is very short, and even if a person is looking for crap, I'd like to give them a little something good. So that's been my approach, and the best way I can do that is to be my best self. All right, is to do my best bodybuilding, is to do my gift that I'm here to be put out for, and hopefully teach through that. Right? There's nothing. I don't have to try too hard to do anything. So that's been in marketing. I've had a whole new perspective. I haven't been thinking of it as the way they taught me. I've been thinking about simply as presence. When a person is listening, like right now, you're listening to me, reaching down, right? You can't be doing anything else. You can't be, you don't know what's going on in the back, right? You have no clue. There's no idea. So this kind of one-way stream of presence has been it's a very passionate topic to me lately. And I've been trying to figure out how to maximize it when people get a shot to look at you through social media for whatever that is. And hopefully that's goodness, in if anything. So that's been sort of on my mind new with bodybuilding, as you say, if there's anything that I've been trying new, is that I've been trying to break the rules that I've always felt were limitations on myself. So I'm currently doing a very simple split right now. I'm doing 3 upper body days, 2 lower body days. And I'm trying to just do whatever inspires me for that time. I'm taking a lot of ideas. I'm studying a little music right now, a little music theory, and they have these ideas of like dominant chords, dominant fits, and all these things like that. And you see these ideas from elsewhere, and you're like, oh, I can put this into training, right? So if you have 3 upper body days, I'm like, oh, you can have 3 upper body days, and everything is baseline, sort of like a chord is baseline. But you can have a dominant chest delt day, then you can have a dominant arm day, then you can have sort of a dominant something day. So I'm sort of just making things up off of what I know works within the rules, but just flowing and having fun. And obviously all this stuff comes down into my clients and comes down into the content and information that I make. So I'm just having fun and being inspired by sources outside of studies and my peers of how I started. I'm like Walt Disney. I'm just playing with the trains. And somehow out of those trains comes Disney World. Who knew?
Well,
So that's kind of where I'm at.
yeah, the reason I'm moving around here was I was just looking up online your website for Fortis EQ. So do you want to tell the
Uh-huh.
listeners a little bit about Fortis? Fortis is Latin, right? I think it's
Yeah,
Altius
it's Latin.
Fortius. Yeah.
Yeah, fortissimo. I actually first heard it from music. It's just, louder, 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 more and more and more. And fortis just simply means just strong, strength. Uh, and EQ is a kind of a shorthand for emotional intelligence. And at the time when I started Fortis, it was just the best. It was basically what I wanted to get across, right? I wanted the people to be not only in the physical sense stronger, more muscular, leaner, better, but when you left me, I wanted you to have a little more emotional intelligence over yourself and how you execute the system. So it's really more of a sort of a metaphor for the coaching style that I've taken on, right? I've had coaches who are heavily data point driven, right? Like this data point matters. You got to lose weight in the prep or this or this and that. And so not only do all those, the best way I tell people is I try to balance the qualitative and the quantitative, right? I've had great coaches over history and in my life. And the coaches that know when to drive you hard on the numbers, they drive you. And when they know how to just drive you hard on the emotions and as a person, they do it. So that's been my sort of whole approach with it is to actually take time and have check-ins where we know each other, we have equity invested into each other. A lot of my clients I've had 10 years. 12 years, some of them I've had for quite some time. So it's really about building a relationship with an athlete and keeping them as long as they're willing to learn what I'm learning and learn more about themselves and to be open and vulnerable and not just, feel ashamed if they had a bad week. Tell me what happened. What happened? Let's talk, right? There's something deeper if we peel back the layers that we're not addressing. So I think that's it. Teaching athletes to see it coming, it meaning whatever's gonna fuck you up, gonna make you stumble, and having the emotional intelligence to deal with it, to get through and do the hard stuff. It's not all just don't be a bitch, hit it harder. There's a it's a unexplainable depth in coaching, and you're qualified in one area
Yeah.
specifically, but it's unimaginable the amount of things you can coach a person on. So that's sort of been my approach. These habits don't change overnight. It takes quite some time. So
I want to drill down on a couple of points you mentioned there. So the first one you just mentioned there about it's not always about pushing harder, getting cracking that whip on your back, more sets, more training volume, um, pushing the cardio, all that kind of thing. What are some of the soft skills that people need for success to improve their body composition? Especially around some of those clients that have been asking you recently about, give me more punishment or give me
yeah.
more training stress.
So a big philosophy I have is that tell me everything about you and let's just take the next step forward. I imagine it's sort of like all right, if you're trying to are you in Canberra?
I'm in Sydney.
You're in Sydney?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, perfect. So if you're trying to drive from Sydney to Perth, there's a lot of ways to get there. For some reason there might be an archetype who's like drive me straight through the middle, drive me through the right. There might be that guy, and then there might be somebody who's like I want to see the coast.
Scenic route.
Right, I want to see, yeah, right. The coaching is I always see my position a lot like a GPS, and if I see someone's got a hankering for something just because they want to prove that they can drive through the middle of the desert when they're selling flights are on sale right now to Perth. You
Yeah.
don't, you don't, you can sit comfortably and fly from Sydney to Perth any day. You don't have to walk backwards. So I see sometimes there's a lot of people who want to do the hardcore mentality just to express out into the world that in my spirit I am hardcore of proving it just to prove it, right? And I personally think that the best thing that any athlete can do uh is do the thing that works best for them, right? Is to follow the process or whatever is called in the process. And sometimes I do have some clients who need to take less of the scenic route, right? Sometimes you do gotta dodge the wallabies and go straight through the middle dudes. Like sometimes you do got to take the hard route. So for me, it's about giving a person what's just for them. If you're soft and need some hardening, then let's harden you up, right? Then let's just crack the whip on you a little bit. If you are craving the whip, if you're overly dependent on the whip, then maybe you need to just forget progress for a while and just for a year prove that you can be consistent, right? So the soft skills could be any soft skill that they need, right? I find that the one I would have to say that's most common is probably people wanting to prove something where they just don't have to, right? Physiology doesn't work off how you think. Physiology works off your inputs. it responds to stimulus, right? The appropriate stimulus. And
I
so
agree.
if you've got this heavy philosophy tied up that you I don't take days off, and it's like it's crazy to me. It's crazy. It's like some people don't have to take days off. If you're there, maybe not, but I would say the most popular soft skills are getting people off of trying to do it through their philosophy and doing it the way of the process. And that soft skill of the process, I would probably say the biggest are, let me see here. I actually have a list here. All right. Outworking, probably the biggest soft skill. Outworking is probably outworking quiet. Preparation, that's probably the biggest one. Silence, I think people talk too much in their head. I think to shut up is probably the best, and because your head goes at a million miles per hour,
Mm.
but the process is like it takes a week to lose a pound. It's gonna take like a whole week
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
how many words you can say in your head. And then the biggest one, I'd probably say humility. Just humility and not doing what you want to do. There will be a moment when you do what you want to do. And that's one thing, especially with my powerlifters that I learned big time, is that there will be the day where all the heavens open up and you get to yell and rate. There will be that moment, but that moment does not come until you set up that lift perfectly, until the judge calls you perfectly. Like you still have to have humility up until the point. It's like a soldier who's ready to go to war, but he still must wait on the order, right? It's like you have to wait for the right moment to strike the iron while it's hot. And so that's the thing that I have is always trying to get athletes to do the right thing at the right moment. It's very sequential, as opposed to just coming in hot for a meet, coming in hot, and you miss your weigh-in. It's like, well, you were plenty hot, but you didn't do your job. It's like it's like now we're relying too much on a bad philosophy then, right?
Yeah.
If you're failing, then that's not working. So there's endless soft skills, I would say. And so for me, the biggest thing that I do in Fortis is I get to know the person. It's very straightforward. I just get to know the person, and over time I let you try your way, try my way. I'm not saying I got the answers, but uh, I try to give you the best directions from Sydney to Perth that I think for this weather, flight pattern, et cetera, would work. Detours, reroutes, the whole thing. So step by step, just week by week, day by day.
But step day by day. You touched on the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is something again we've discussed in previous episodes, but you have a little bit of a different philosophy on the topic. And I think you've used the Jenga puzzle analogy where you have a really strong framework or skeletal structure to what makes you you or your values, and then you only take on or remove pieces of the puzzle once you've had some careful consideration and reflection upon your character and what's important to you.
You just described chess. Yes, that's the game of chess. You nailed it. That's the game of chess. It's
Yeah.
chess, not checkers, man. I mean, it's really that's you nailed it. I mean, and that's the thing, right? There's one truth. There's one truth to this whole thing that all of us are searching for. Many ways in, right? It doesn't matter if you call the truth Buddha, or it doesn't matter if you call the truth yin and yang. It doesn't matter what you call it, right? We're all trying to get to the same center. And that's it. You nailed it. It's chess. So I think a lot of the skills that you see basically are needed most, if I had to kind of double back on that, in the Maslow's sort of hierarchy of needs and pulling the pieces, really allocate to the person for who they are and where they are in their life, right? I find that the reason people do a lot of this is it's a huge projection. A lot of what we're doing out there on stage. When I first competed, I ran track in college. I ran track in college for a year. Hated the structure of it, hated the rules of it, hated the school of it. Then I went home, then I went back and I went back to another school. I went back with my brother. He's a great track athlete. I ran again, tried it twice, didn't love it. What I actually found that satisfied my needs most was having a social life around my friends, not having an overlord head coach who checked my grades and all types of stuff. And what made me happy was just to work at the supplement store and live with my friends. And that's what I bet on. I was emotionally intelligent enough to take that risk to be a non-scholarship athlete and just to do that. And that seed of just following what felt right sort of led me to this, right? Actually following my needs. And I think there's a lot of glamorization of, how do we say it? denying your needs, right? It's be hardcore, it's do what you have to do. Um, but what you have to do is sort of fulfill your soul. What do you actually want to do? You know, who do you want to be? How do you actually want to do this? So I feel like a lot of people take that hierarchy of needs, and if self-actualization, getting that trophy, being on the top of the platform should be at the highest of that whole base, the base becomes sort of inverted for a lot of people, right? Self-actualization becomes their primary mode of operating. It's that they don't see themselves, they would dream about being Instagram famous and big before they would drink water and have protein and get some steps. It's crazy, you know, it's completely inverted in the way that people have these needs sort of ranked. So for me, I would say doubling back on motivation, the biggest thing is be true to what your soul's calling for. That's why Maslow calls it a hierarchy of motivation. You know, like don't go picking and choosing what you think is motivating to you. You're gonna burn out and be like every guy who I used to bench 200 kilos. Every guy we've met who said when I was your age type of guy. So my whole thing is how do we get less of those when I was your agers, and how do we get to more Jeff Alberts? And I think that's if a man's just true to himself, if a woman is true to how they feel, you end up running more sustainably better over time based off what's motivating you at the time. Right now, I'm not motivated to compete. What do you want me to say? You want me to lie? What do you want me to do? So, but a lot of people I meet, they say I can't do it any other way. I got to compete. I don't know how to lose weight any other way, and they get stuck in these odd faux motivation traps. So
So, do you think one of the important factors around Maslow's hierarchy of needs is in terms of self-actualization, you really need to be conscious and aware enough to determine what self-actualization looks like for you, and how this relates to like the cost of specificity. So, getting that's a concept you've talked about, but getting as close to happiness as you can without overshooting the mark, but also knowing, like you were talking about, those four baskets of time, friends, family, your coaching, for instance, your bodybuilding, whatever it may be, um, understanding where your time is going, what self-actualization looks for you, and then the cost of really drilling down on one of those things and not being flexible enough to try new things or experiment.
yeah, I'm guilty of that. You're calling me out right now. I am like I always tell my wife, I always tell my wife, I say, I'm an addict. I just need to be on the safe side of whatever I'm addicted to. It needs to be on something fruitful, and hopefully not
Sure. Yeah.
like right now I'm currently addicted to Lord of the Rings. I
What was
just,
that? Was it used to be Marvel, wasn't it? You really got into your Marvel
dude, I keep getting
superheroes
into
and
different things. I just got into Harry Potter recently.
yeah,
And so this is me catching up on all those years when I was bodybuilding. I had no idea any of this stuff was happening. I
yeah,
was just bodybuilding.
yeah.
I didn't know what movie was coming out. No idea. I had no idea what was going on. Didn't watch the news. I just completely
But like
like
a whole new
specific.
world's opened up for you.
A whole new world has opened up for me, and so that's the thing. I'm enjoying it, but at the same time, I'm finding myself, sort of leaving again. So, if I had to answer the question, Maslow talks about this concept of prepotency. Essentially, all right. Well, let's say the best example of prepotency. All right. So there's a okay. Um, I forgot the name of this book, but Jordan Peterson talks about this book all the time. I read it long ago, but there was this psychologist who got taken into an internment camp in Nazi Germany. They took him into the war. What was that place in Poland? Um, like the worst camp they had. So
Oh,
anyway,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. It'll come back to us.
yeah, I forget the name. I forget the name.
Oh, Auschwitz.
Um,
Let me.
Aus yeah,
Yeah,
Auschwitz. He was in an Auschwitz camp. So anyways, he's I mean, okay. It was horrendous, right? These are professionals, doctors, lawyers being put in internment camps. These are people in the height of their careers, people like you and I. And so he goes in and then he talks about his experiences there from the perspective of his trade. And one of the things that he talks about in terms of motivation there, he says one thing that always blew him away in the state of sort of like deprivation of hunger and being overworked and not having shoes to work in the cold for 10 hours and hours. is that there was no sexual deviancy, right? There was like no rape or sexual deviancy. There was very like little motivation to do anything beyond talk about food, stealing food, thieving food, and dream about what they're going to do when they're going to get out. He essentially says, if working in the Maslow's hierarchy scheme, is that when people were so far down the line, and their motivation was mostly food, they can only think food. They can only emote about food. They can only express about food, right? Have you ever gotten so, and this is what I feel like we get a little bit in
Bodybuilding,
prep. Yeah,
food focus.
absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And to tie it all together, I think this is why you see in a lot of religions, they have fasting, right? I think to get your motivation prepotency down, to not focus on actualization anymore, just to focus on just where will I get my next meal? Like dogs, they're very food motivated. So when we become very food motivated, we don't have enough potency even at that basic bottom pyramid. So self-actualization is not even a real thing, right? This is why when you look at all the people who have been, let's say, servants or slaves around the world, their life has been more about just simply survival. That has been their motivation. But as you do survive, as you do get your belly full again, well, now you're thinking about sex, right? Well, now you are, right? And then once you do get satisfied there, it's a sort of to get to self-actualization, it requires that you are potent in those things at the base. And this is what we can call balance, let's say. Right. And so if you go overly specific and you say, I only want to self-actualize and define yourself only as someone who self-actualizes, eventually your psyche is not going to feel that potency of, I have enough friends in my life. I have enough love in my life. I have enough security in my life. Right. This is why there's no shortage of, still to this day, bodybuilders living in vans outside of, Gold's Gym in Venice. They only specifically wanted that thing, but never put much thought into those other motivations that were calling them, but they denied it.
Sure.
So that's one thing that I find particularly devastating that a lot of people go through. They go all in, but when they go all in, they go a little too all in, right? Like I understand going all in, but don't want to necessarily live on the street to go all in. And so the cost of going that specific is big, right? And we hear these heroic stories about people who did it, but every time I talk to one of these people and you meet with them, I was thinking about one of my I'm not sure if you're familiar with who Dr. Joe Klemczewski is. Dr. Joe uh was Lane's mentor. Lane is from Evansville, Indiana. And Lane, when he first wanted to compete, he went and met with Dr. Joe, right? So Dr. Joe, in my opinion, he invented two things: online coaching. He was mail in order coaching at the time. All right, he'd peak you for your contest, as well as sort of macronutrient coaching. And this is how Lane got the idea. And Lane really popularized this idea with Alberto Nunez and the 3DM jig, and it's just spread like wildfire. And obviously, when it gets to the scientific community, it got legitimized as a legit method. Dr. Joe told me that when he first moved into Evansville. He moved in from another town in Indiana. He said, I did it. I made it. He's like, but when I look back, it was the stupidest thing I ever did. And I feel a lot of that sentiment when I look back at some of the super specific risks that I had, like what was I gonna do? Never be in a relationship and just win these shows? Like what was I gonna do? Just never try to own a home. Like, it's like you gotta look back and realize like, wow, I bet big, and if it didn't work out for me, I would have to live with the cost of that specificity. But sometimes you take those risks and you do win, and I'm fortunate that I won. I was always very confident that I was going to win. But I don't know where it came from. It was kind of stupid, and I think that's the beauty of being a human being. You're right. We're kind of stupid. It's like that scene in Batman, whatever, the Dark Knight, when he sort of crawls out of that hole and he goes for it without the rope, and he just climbs out, and it's like our stupidity is what defines us, right? What idiot would build those pyramids by hand? What idiot would go for that? And so sometimes we get a little hubris as humans and we become demigods for a moment. And that's the beauty of what we're all trying to sort of get to, is to deny our humanness and to take risk and go big. But it all comes out in the wash. It's like Ronnie. Ronnie did it. Ronnie was a god and Ronnie paid for it.
Yeah.
Ronnie paid for it big time. So
But I think one of those things, and you mentioned this about Birdo, you said that he almost like when he's training, he goes dumb. And it was almost
stupid,
like
stupidest guy you'd ever meet, dude.
Like Ronnie too. Like if you look at Ronnie, just like screaming around the gym, just talking shit, having a laugh, enjoying himself, but also just slapping on ridiculous amount of weight. But you think the guys who are overthinking things, smarter, more, you know, numbers based.
They could I will say this, they could never beat a guy like a dumb guy like me. You could never do it. You could never do it. It's never in a million years, right? It goes back to a simple and I think a very complicated concept. The simple is that we're still monkeys,
Yeah.
right? Very high developed frontal lobes,
Yeah.
but we're just apes, man. Really, and the big dumb ape is, he's gonna win. He's just big, he's just bigger, It's very simple. Then I think the second concept is this idea of it goes by many names. Flow state, you can
Yep.
call it. Uh, I've heard it being called in Napoleon Hill, he's called it the infinite intelligence.
Yeah.
You loosen yourself. You give all yourself. In Islam, they call this to submit fully. You give all of yourself up. Jesus says, the one who loses their life will gain their life. And when you let go and when you dumb the mind, the collective subconscious I mean, endless tens of thousands of years of being a human, that knowledge, it just becomes automatic. It's like dancing. There's something more infinitely intelligent than my frontal lobe could ever do. There's just something that you can tap into that becomes you. It's like Michael Jordan on the basketball court. It's just like, it's just genius in no thought, right? It's like the Buddhists have been saying this forever. It's like no thought living. You just sort of get into these states where you let it become you, or Mozart, right? I don't know where all that came from. He didn't think it. It just sort of happened. Even for you, some of your best ideas have come up to you, and you've caught them, and you said, "Oh, that's a good idea," right? You've caught them sort of like a fish, but the
Yeah.
idea came from some bubbling subconscious somewhere greater. And I feel like when you go dumb, you operate completely out of that. So I think you can sort of train your hand in habit correctly to make sure you're doing things right. And once you know how to operate within the correct parameters, drop the mind. One example that I've been using recently is psychologist Phil Stutz. One thing he says, embrace the pain. He calls it the pain cloud. He says, think about it like a football player who's on the line and he's got to go rush through. And if you can tell yourself, fuck it. I like this. I love the pain. Bring on the pain. That guy's gonna win, right? It's like Mike Tyson. You're never gonna beat the guy who's willing to die. You can't beat the kamikaze thinking guy. And that's sort of what I think we like in sports, sort of watching that gladiator effect to see who's willing to put it out on the line and do it. So that's always been a big thing for me is there's a time in American football where you would sit and you would watch tape and you'd study plays, and there's a time for you just to bark like a fucking dog, right? It's a beautiful balance between the two. And so Ronnie did it better than I think we've ever I mean, just as
Yeah.
stupid as they come, but just as beautiful because he just dropped it. He was in it. So yeah, there's beauty to that.
There's from the Bible, if you go back to Jesus' time, he said how intensity is emptying the mind to become poor in spirit.
Say
So
that one more time.
intensity is emptying the mind to become poor in spirit.
Uh I know, but I guess in context to what? In terms of intensity or
More so, yeah, well, it's just saying like, emptying your mind to become poor in spirit. I guess this was something that was shared via one of your reels in the context of um, understanding why
uh
training is important for mental.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So an example I always use for people. So I think when Jesus referenced poor in spirit, I think one thing he was referencing is this idea of presence that I was sort of talking about. You can see it very simply, right? When you open your phone and go on Instagram or TikTok, you can call yourself poor in spirit, let's say. You open it and you're open to anything. You have no baggage of what you're looking for, unless you specifically are looking for something, you know? But to be poor in spirit means that in terms of your state of consciousness, have nothing, have no baggage, have no anything. Be purely responsive to what's happening right here and right now. One thing that I always kind of give as an example is think about everything you've ever done sort of in your life, Hayden. Think about any time you've said, I'm gonna be a this, I'm gonna be a that, it's gonna go this way, this is how it's gonna go. 10 times out of 10, it never fucking works out that way. There's always some, it's crazy. It's like you're wrong 10 times out of 10. It's like you can get the general idea. Like I'm sure when you first said I want a podcast, you were close, but where you are today is nowhere like you thought it was gonna go, right? Your first day, you didn't say, okay, I'm gonna talk to this guy, and then here's how I'm gonna get guests, and it's completely changed. It like how do I say it? Reality is not of what the mind can think of. Reality is what's actually happened here now, here live, and you've got to sort of be responsive on the court. That'd be like a soccer player going out there saying, here's what's gonna happen. You have no fucking idea what's going to happen. The best you can do is have your staff, have your spear, be prepared, have humility to deal with whatever situation it is, accept whatever situation is, and give your all to that situation. So I think to come in too fixated, to come in too rigid, to say this is exactly how it's going to go, we don't have that capacity in our thinking. I think our thinking is powerful. It can help us calculate, quantitative problems, and we can sort of possibly predict what question you want to ask next. And we have some depth. It is very powerful, but in terms of reality, actual execution of the true thing, 9 times out of 10 in business, in life, in relationships, things do not go the way you assume that they were going to go. And so the idea, I guess, that Jesus is saying here is stop assuming and accept and live it and rock it and do it and take it head on, bring it on. Forget what you think it's going to be, come with your knowledge, come with all that you know, and you don't have to do a ton of thinking. I'm sure with what you've studied and your education, you have a ton of neurons for all that knowledge you have, but whether you think about them or not, they're up there stored. Whether you're thinking about your earliest memories or not, they're still there. You don't got to think about them for them to be utilized into who you are. They all sort of come onto your expression of you. So they're there. They're working for you. You don't have to pop them into the picture show of the front of your mind, then execute. That'll slow you down. That's too slow. You've got to be in it now. You've got to be free now. So drop your baggage. Take no, Jesus would say, take no bags for the journey, go and live this life and rock it, be here, be here right here, right now.
I think when you were talking about before about how it's funny how with bodybuilding, like we impose so much isolation upon ourselves,
Mm.
and like the highest form of punishment is
Oh,
imprisonment, being locked
oh,
in a cell, and then as bodybuilders, what do? Lock ourselves in our home,
we lock
our
ourselves in a house.
macros and our food scale in the gym. So I really, and you know what, I really like that kind of. And for me, I did some strongman comps, tried some powerlifting, did ran a marathon. So I get out there and try and pursue different achievements for the sake of the experience, but also like just being able to say, you know what, actually did that. I trained for that, and
Yes.
I could achieve it. So, do you have any like based on what you're doing with Fortis EQ? I think you probably have a lot of really robust discussions with your clients, but also business partners and other influential people about what kind of strategies, tips would you give to the listener who kind of struggles to flex within the constraints of their lifestyle, but wants to be a good bodybuilder or a strength athlete, but struggles with that rigidity that they've kind of imposed upon themselves, and they've struggled to get into say flexible dieting approaches or
Yeah.
like living the life really.
Yeah, I would say one, keep struggling. I think the entire method is a question of how good do you want to be? I think that's the whole basis
Yeah.
of what we're doing here, right? That's why you did those strongman competitions. That's why you did the powerlifting competitions. Your head, your spirit has these ideas about who you are and who it thinks it is,
So
and
it's
now
all
only.
values based, all about
Sorry, say
value,
that again.
all about values, right? So it's all around
Absolutely,
you. Yeah.
absolutely. And I feel what we're trying to do, at least in what we're doing here, is we're trying to express that in the physical form, right? I want to see it. I want it to be true. I don't want it to be something that I think I am. I want to do the competition to see if I am really it, right? It's sort of getting some concrete evidence via action, right? The only thing that's sort of real to us is action. So I think if you keep asking yourself that question of how good do you want to be, you'd be willing to make a mistake all the time. Currently, with what I'm doing now, half of my day, I would probably say, is frustration, is not feeling like I'm professional. I don't feel like I'm coasting in the seat of comfort. I think you have to sort of get out of that mode of homeostasis and get learning. The only way you're going to learn and move forward is if you're okay with that. Again, humility of not looking good, of getting yourself as low as you can to say I'm a nobody. I'm just trying. I'm trying to prove this to myself. So for me, that's the biggest thing. If you're struggling, struggle. And this is where kind of the advantage of how I do things in Fortis at least comes in, or I don't even want to call it mine, just any good coach. You say, okay, where did we lose? Right? A good team can't get good until they analyze their losses. They analyze and they pay their dues. Sometimes paying your dues is, yeah, you did that prep isolated and it was hard and you learned from it. So now let's take it and move forward. So it's either what is the saying? How does the saying go? You either win or lose. I'm sorry, it's you either win or learn. There is no such thing as losing, right? So if you are struggling with something, learn from it. Don't redundantly keep doing these same things of isolation and pushing yourself in. Do the isolation. Learn from you'll never learn how to fly unless you take a ton of failures. So the idea isn't to get as perfect as possible. I hear a lot of young competitors say, I want to compete and one day I want to compete, but I want to wait because I want to be perfect and I want to win.
There's no perfect
Just
time. Yeah.
it's like learning how to drive a car. The mistakes are essential to your learning. And uh the biggest thing I push with my people is have humility for the one who can lose. Goes back to the Jesus concept, right? He said, "Watch, I'm gonna prove this to all you." He got on a cross and basically got murdered, right? He had the lowest reward possible, and it's kind of a lesson for all of us. The one that's willing to eat shit, the one that's willing to just stay as low as possible, is the one that's above all, the one that wins. That's sort of how it works. That's how you win these competitions, is that you ate shit for X amount of time, you lost, you learn from your lessons, and you move forward. It's only when you do take those losses and you don't have the humility and you take it personal, or you take it as resentment, or you take it as something that was done personally to you. It's not personal. It's just the process. Every bodybuilder isolates at first. It's a easy way to think that you can isolate and
I think
control
you need
everything.
to. Yeah, I think you need to at the start and
Absolutely.
over time. But you've spoken to, as I said, like before, Jeff Alberts and all those guys, and they've said that they get tired, or the
Tired of it.
specificity that's required over a
And
long
so and so
time.
Hayden, this is my big thing, right? About emotional intelligence. If you're tired, acknowledge that. For there is always a new way in this method. There are endless, you know how these things go. You've seen you can't read enough papers. There's endless ways. If this way doesn't work, try another way. But it's when you get prideful and not humble and you say, I gotta walk to Perth backwards on my knees. Right? It's when you're stuck on your BS philosophy that's going
Yeah.
to hold you back, right? That's the biggest thing that I'm trying to break through to people, is that don't be afraid to move forward through what you feel or think you need to do. The process can teach you the ultimate way, and that it's going to look like a different road for each one of us.
Although there is that idea of the process and preventing your like emotions from derailing your action. So I think in the isolation it does help with the process because you talk about it like going vegan and
Yeah,
trying to eat out with friends and family. It can be hard, especially when people don't share the same
you're right.
interest. So There is that. It is hard, and for a lot of people who are outside looking in, it seems like a simple fix. Like don't worry about it, man. Like just come out and have the chicken and vegetables and the potato at the restaurant, and it's like
Who
when
wants to do that? Who wants to do that? And so that's the thing. It goes back to that question, right? How bad do you want it, right? So if you find yourself, for anyone, you might find yourself in this place to say, okay, I'm satisfied with my physique. I'm satisfied with how I look. But the truth is, I don't have a lot of friends and I feel quite lonely from time to time, right? According to Maslow, you're going to crash and burn at some point if you
yeah,
feel socially isolated, right? Even if you have a dog who doesn't feel socialized, they start acting all strange. We are social beings. So for the goal, we can't put the goal of who we are as competitors, the self-actualization goal, above the denial that we need to be around others and feel loved, let's say. So you do it and you do well in isolation, but maybe you say, okay, well, I have to admit to myself that I can't isolate. And now that I'm at an intermediate stage or intermediate advanced stage, I'm gonna have to find the strength to fucking do it, to eat those fucking potatoes and rice and chicken in front of people. At some point, you're gonna have to grow the fuck up and find the strength to do it. And that's the whole challenge of constantly saying, how bad do you want it? And you find new strength and you find new strengths to do it to the point where I know. I just keep going back to this Jesus or Buddha example where you
how
could
many
stubbornly.
times how many times have you sat down to eat? Like for instance, I remember in high school, I pull out like a thing of chicken and basmati rice, vegetables. Why put some seasoning on that? Why, like, how do you eat that? It's like, like, what about sauces or like, condiments and things? Like, don't you get like, isn't it just boring being like living that lifestyle and that? Like,
That's that's what they'll say, and then they go crazy for you on Instagram. It's strange, right? It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen. It's like the nut, right? And then I also think uh everything that people do. No, I try not to take anything personal.
yeah.
Everything that people do is a projection of their own selves. Because the truth is, if they had the strength to do what I did, they would do it. They know how you look. They would do it. They would in a heartbeat if they had the strength to do what you do. They would fucking do it. But they can't. But they can't. So they have to nitpick and find all these other ways around it and things like that. So I understand, and I understand why they do it, and I don't take any offense to it. Dude, I come from a big ass ghetto ass family, right? So it ain't easy.
Oh, I've
It ain't
seen the spreads you
easy.
guys put on the food.
It ain't easy,
Yeah.
dude. It's not easy. Dude, the posing trunks, the whole thing. I never hear the end of it.
Uh,
But at the end of the day, they're all very proud of me, right? It's like I just had to survive them in this very moment being wrong, but I knew ultimately if I have confidence in the method, in the process, that's really the whole thing, is have confidence in the process. People are going to derail you. They're going to say this, they're going to say that, but you have to say this process has to work. And then sometimes you do the process and it doesn't work. That means you need to try something new. That's why I think this is a interesting system. It's slowly carving and defining you, sometimes through loss, mostly through loss and frustration. But I've had a life where I felt plush and I've ate with them and I've drank with them and I've secretly just hated myself for it. I just don't even feel like it's my life. So I much rather have sort of the pain of transformation and change than the pain of just being normal and not feeling like I'm expressing who at least my soul calls for me to be. So
Sure.
after time, you get sick of it and you just say, "Fuck it." And you ask the crazy questions. You say, can you just grill a piece of chicken? And you do it difficult and you order difficult and it's okay to stand out. And then at the end of this life, dude, they're gonna after like someone's been in their grave, at least in the States for 100 years, they just throw you into a mass grave. And I mean, no one's coming to visit you after 100 years. You've been
Yeah.
dead. You know what I mean? It's like you're dead. You're gone. No one's gonna remember you. So it doesn't matter. None of this matters. So just do what you were born to do. You'd never see an acorn. Tiny acorn saying, "One day I'm going to be a great oak tree," and it feels ashamed of it if
Yeah.
some weeds are making. He's going to be a great oak tree. That's what he's going to do, right? That's what it's meant to do. That's what it's born to do. So stand up on it, man. It's hard, and that's the whole point.
And so I think one of the things that a lot of people think about as bodybuilders is that like selfishness to friends, family, everything they're cutting out during the prep. One of the things my perspective is when you're prepping, yeah, you might need to go into isolation, focus on yourself, but in the off season or the improvement season, that's when you can, you know,
Yeah.
when you got a bit more freedom, wiggle room, start to like reconnect with people and spend more time with them. But one of the things is like the subconscious excuses that you make not to stick to your diet or training because you're
Mm.
concerned about what other people think. I think that derails a lot of people, like from achieving what they actually want to do. And like you said, when you're in the grave, everyone will forget you after 100 years. So it's important to also remember that, like, there's nothing for you to give the world unless you kind of build and order and maintain that within you, like that
Yeah. What one thing
vision
that I've
motivation.
one thing that I've really been holding on to that I've seen, um, okay, so the LGBTQ community, one stance that they have that I will forever agree with is that no one, no human being should live a closeted life. No one. No one. You should be able to be who you are 100%, right? If someone said, "Hey, I want to go and be a plumber," the world would embrace them, the world would accept them, the world would it would help them. Take them to school, the world would give them every tool possible. Just because I'm a minority, right? This is what we learned from the LGBT community. Just because I'm a minority and you're not very familiar with what I am and who I am and how I live my life, why should I be closeted? Well, I'm a bodybuilder. Everyone knows who Arnold Schwarzenegger is. I'm a bodybuilder. That's what I am. Maybe there aren't many like me around, right? But Lord of the Rings. Gandalf is like one of five wizards in the world of Middle Earth, let's say. He's
Yeah,
never ashamed to be a wizard, right? You're made one of one, every single one of us, no joke. Our genetic variation is a one of one. You were made purposely for that genetic variation. If you came out expressing yourself as a bodybuilder, cares what other people think about you? Don't these other people get to chase their dreams and go do all types of things and fly airplanes and they get to do whatever they want? How come we can say that this group of lesbian women can't be themselves or enough closeting any group? Anyone should feel a true pride in who they are, right? There's nothing wrong with being a Adonis, beautiful body display model. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think food culture is so fucked in the Western world, dude, right? Food culture is so bad that we feel like the outcast. They're crazy. They're crazy for eating that shit. They're the
yeah.
crazy ones, in my opinion. They're crazy. Dude, statistically, in the West, I don't know how it is in Australia, but at least here, heart disease is number one, right? People are dying. A lot of it is genetic, but very few people who are fit and healthy and eating and not overweight are dying of heart disease,
Well,
right?
it's
It
only getting
happens.
worse. It's only getting worse because technology is getting so much better. So early detection. So the number of people that have different cardiovascular comorbidities coming forward is just exploding. But the pressure with that is on the hospitals, the health system. But the one most important thing for combating all that is like modifiable lifestyle change, like nutrition,
Changeable. It's
train, yeah,
completely changeable.
like
Can you believe?
all those non-modifiable things like age, genetics, all those things. Obviously, you can't
Right.
control that who your mother
But
or father is.
and that's the reality we live in right now,
Yeah,
right? The reality we live in is this, is that the number one cause of death, at least in the West, can be for the overwhelming majority of people who die from heart disease can be adjusted and avoided. These people who are walking in sort of to a zombie-like disease are
yeah,
judging us.
yeah.
Can you believe that?
To be
Unbelievable.
honest, though, it is when you're walking around these body comps or like bodybuilding competitions, tanned up with like your pack of rice cakes and a little bit of honey, and you know, like half naked with your posing trunks on. Like it's yeah, you get your moment right where you are. I feel quite like weird. Like this is really is a weird sport. It is like a beauty pageant, but
Yeah, yes, but no. But think about it. Let's say there's a gosh, you know what's weird to me? Cosplay, Comic Cons are weird to me. Yo-yo competitions are weird to
yeah,
me. There's
yeah.
so many things that are
All
weird to me.
individual. Yeah.
Right, but for some reason we trigger people, right? There's some projection that continuously comes out, and they say, "Ugh, I can never eat like that. Ugh, I can never do." Right? If the yo-yo world champion came out and started yo-yoing, no one would say anything. If you wanted to chop down trees and or wrangle up a bull, who cares? But there's something that triggers people in the West because I think secretly they all desire it. I think we secretly all desire to look better. I think that's something that we all see in our self-image. We'd want to look better. And when you see someone doing it on the extreme, you hate it. And I think it's one big projection. And so I think that projection causes a lot of bodybuilders to stumble and get off their path by what other people who have no idea what no have put no thought into this method thinks of them. Most importantly and secondly, if it is not for us, if it weren't for these people who spend their life resistance training, these doctors are not going to save you. These doctors don't know anything
No.
about, I'm sorry, I should be more specific. Medical doctors, they don't know anything about going into the gym and getting fit. If they learn it personally, they do, but it's not in their curriculum. They've learned medicine, right? That's what they've learned, and medicine is probably the greatest technology that the West has seen in the last, 200 years. It's medicine is a great thing, but if it weren't for these personal trainers, if it weren't for these people, like it would be a lost knowledge. Like it falls on us, right? I don't know what I thought something you're doing. I don't know what you're doing with diabetes. But if it weren't for you,
Yeah.
I don't know what would happen to these people, right? So
Okay, this is the thing, right? With diabetes. So yeah, I work for Diabetes Australia as an exercise physiologist, but what I see is that the people, and this is what we're getting back to with the modifiable, non-modifiable. When you get individuals who have developed type 1 diabetes, it's all because of those non-modifiable determinants,
back
right?
to
So
the same heart disease factors. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's often related to hereditary mechanisms, autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
They often can't control it. Um, they have so much more that they have to consider around insulin requirements, carbohydrate consumption, all of these things. Every hour they have to check their blood glucose levels, or if they're using a CGM, they can track that via their smartphone. But when it comes to type 2 diabetes, where oftentimes it is related to those non-modifiable determinants, but a lot of the time, and most predominantly, it's related to lifestyle factors like nutrition, inactivity or living a sedentary lifestyle, smoking, alcoholism. But they're so much less self-managing than those individuals with type 1. And I think, as we say, that's the biggest factor influencing the burden of disease is those modifiable determinants. But it's so frustrating because it's easy for me to say it, but they're the easiest thing. They're the lowest hanging fruit.
Have you ever eaten a family-sized bag of Doritos? I have many times, and I'm here to say that it's irresistible every single time, dude. Every single time.
Dude, I've eaten
I
a family sized lasagna. That's what
I
that's the first thing I'll be doing after these comps, mate.
so I think that's where, not to be too arrogant, right? All of us at one point, we grew up on food and we love food. I love food. I will never not lose my love for it. But I think it's very hard to say, I'm gonna live a different life. I'm gonna give up on it and I'm gonna move forward. And you see this persecution everywhere, right? Anytime someone leaves in the life of the normal thing that doesn't bear much of a fruitful life or great health, people will tear you down and bring you down for it. And I think kind of circling back to the whole thing, that's why it's so hard because the West food in the West is too hard to quit. I can't blame anyone who doesn't have the strength to sort of get off of it or get off of it as a crutch for their happiness or stress relief for the day. It's good. It's good. It works. It's cheap. It's fast. It's tasty. It's accepted in society just to go to McDonald's and and go to eat gas station food. I can't blame them. I can't blame them at all. But I think at some point when you draw it down and say, okay, you know this. This is probably the number one term you find yourself saying is lifestyle change, right? That's what we do as bodybuilders, as powerlifters, as people on the extreme end. We are the symbol, you can call it, for what lifestyle change would look like. And when people see that, they're repulsed, right?
Too
It's
much.
like if yeah, dude, it's like a nun or something,
To be
you
fair though,
know?
like what I was saying before is like the whole tanning and the stage thing isn't for everyone.
No, not
I
for everyone.
checked out of the hotel in Brisbane and I was sleeping, and you know what it's like when you're sleeping with a competition tan.
Yeah.
And like
Everywhere.
I washed, but it's all over the bed, right? And it's
All
just
over, all over,
they
all
asked me,
over.
and thinking like, what's going on? They're really concerned, like a massacre happened in the hotel or something. But
You gotta bring your own sheets, dude. You
I got to
gotta.
reimburse them for the cleaning bill or whatever. So yeah, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. You're right, but I think there's definitely a whole heap of principles that you can provide even the average Joe working
If
their
you
nine
go to the
to five.
doctor today, they will tell you a protocol that we invented. Some, bodybuilders invented. They will say, "All right, well, you need to do some type of resistance training, some type of aerobic training, cardio to elevate your heart rate, something with a steady elevated heart rate." They're gonna diagnose you more or less a version of what bodybuilders invented. I mean. We are the cure. Maybe we do it at the extreme end, right? Maybe we do it at the highest end. But somewhere on that spectrum, it's always it falls on what we do. It falls on resistance training and in managing your nutrition and somehow having some form of cardiovascular elevation for heart health. That's what it's always going to come down to. Whether that resistance is yoga, it doesn't matter. You have to resist the muscles. If you don't use them, you lose them. We all know that. And so it's always going to come back to us. We've invented everything. We invented exercise. We invented this whole game. I've been learning a lot of forms of archaic exercise, what people were doing before bodybuilding.
Yeah, right.
Helms is very heavy into this as well too.
Yeah.
One that really caught my attention that I've dived into recently is Pilates. Pilates is an early form of resistance training. It was made by this guy Joseph Pilates, and Joseph was your classic, how do I say this? Nazi Germany era thinking guy, right? He just very like, this is right,
Black and
this is
white.
wrong,
Yeah.
no in between. And that's what Pilates is like. And that's why I personally think it's so badass.
Mm.
It's like, it's unbelievable. This guy, in my opinion, was um, a combination of an exercise physiologist and PT before there was these even existed in the medical world, right? This is why the revolution of medical science. This is why medical has changed everything. They've consolidated all these knowledge sets. So, anyways, in Pilates, it's fascinating. It's fascinating what you do. It's fascinating the movements you learn, and uh, in my opinion, it's still very inferior to simply just going and doing three weighted crunches. It's still, I think you would get more out of it if you just went and gave person three doses of 3 sets of 10 of this thing very simply. And it took us a very long time to figure that out. It took us a long time to figure out that it's 3 sets of 15 at this intensity, right? It took us a while to figure this out. So either way, it always comes back to us and what we're doing, and to what scientists are saying, no, this is it. This is verifiable. So it's not just, you know, cardio and running and all that, etc. Resistance training has to come into the picture at some point, especially for women, with osteoporosis and all these things like that. It has to. It doesn't matter if you use bands, no one's saying you got to hit the weight room, but it comes down to us. And I feel very proud of the work that we do. We might be lunkheads and meatheads, but we're making stuff up here. We're getting somewhere in the next 100 years. It'll get more advanced. I was there. I'll never forget, dude. I'll never forget the first time I saw Alberto Nunez eat a Pop Tart in a prep. It was a concept like, what? Food choice does it right, and it just it was the craziest thing I ever saw. I saw the world for the first time in 2009, 2010 break away from this concept of food choice they were obsessed with at the time. Remember they were obsessed with at the time, I think around that time they were in the food society. They're always guessing, I think, the general public on what to do. I think at the time what was very popular was who knows? Keto, not keto, Atkins. So they called it, and then before Atkins, it was low fat. I remember it was big, like it was all this like low fat yogurts. And then like in the 70s, they figured out cholesterol. They were like, oh shit, no cholesterol, right? They're always taking a stab and trying to have one big blanketed general statement of what works. And we finally have gotten to a point, I feel, where we say, okay, well, food choice and your general composition of what your macronutrients are. That's taken a long time to get there. No one was saying this in the 70s or 80s or 90s or even early 2000s. So it's us who are at the extreme constantly tinkering and evolving the method, just like anything else, right? Just like those doctors at the most advanced research hospitals are coming up with the new stuff, right? Or those super advanced players are coming up with the new modalities. I'm sure some NFL player did cryotherapy first. I'm sure it always comes from sort of the top and comes down to the people when we find out what works. So for any bodybuilder who feels ashamed of what we're doing, I say we're leading the pack on what uh health and nutrition is, and we can do it to a point, obviously, to where that it's not healthy and nutritious anymore. But it's the basic composition of what everyone should be doing in some way, shape, or form, monitoring what they eat and some form of resistance training.
So I guess what insights based on what we just discussed there, what insights or recommendations would you have for someone who does love the gym, but really struggles with eating and food, and or is getting into the gym but really struggles with nutritional principles, and maybe is really unsure with the amount of information out there about flexible dieting or keto, paleo, vegan. What's your kind of key principles for to kind of help be that guiding light?
Don't do it. Back to what I tell even my clients who compete. Don't do anything you hate, right? No human being can sustain doing anything they hate. Don't do anything where you feel like I have to run because I'm so overweight, right? You don't have to do anything. Many things work, right? You don't have to do anything. So I would say seek, knock, ask, knock on every door, find, be willing to, even me, a professional, I'm trying new things. That's why I started this podcast. I said, I'm trying new things, trying new stuff, constantly all the time. I'm trying to see what works. And deepen your practice. Know that this is a lifelong practice that every one of us has to eat, and it's a daily thing that we have to do, and you have to enjoy what you eat and find what works for you. There is no wrong answer. We're trying to get to a result. And sometimes you may hear something and the philosophy appeals to you because you like the idea of paleo because it kind of sounds cool to you. But do you really want to eat livers and I mean, do you really, really, what do you want to do? If you really want to eat liver and stuff, fine. I don't, it'll probably work, probably. But do what you like. There's endless options to get it right. There is endless options to get it right. And find what speaks to you well. If you like to eat 4 times a day, eat 4 times a day. If you want to do intermittent fasting, do it that one time. But find a method that's true to you. Don't lie to yourself. Don't say, well, I have to do intermittent fasting because, I'm lazy all day. Right. If you find that your virtues are bad to your technique, then well, then your virtues are you just again you're walking on your knees backwards across the country. That just doesn't make any sense. So find what works for you. Trial and error, find what works for you. And this will take you a lifetime. And it's worth a lifetime. No different than relationships are worth a lifetime. No different than food and love and career. There are certain things that are stuck with you for a life sentence that you'll have to work very hard on. And this is one of them that can't be ignored, although it is oftentimes ignored.
All righty, mate. It's been a great podcast. I've loved chatting to you. We got some
I know.
questions from the listeners, so we'll dive into some of those now.
Cool. Thanks for having me on again, man.
Ah, it's all good. I think what we'll do is we'll have to get you back on. Um, yeah, we'll
Okay.
maybe if you can pull Wayne's arm and try and twist his arm, try and get him.
Hell no. I don't know. I'll
Oh,
see him. I'll see him soon, but dude, people would be amazed how big of a star Lane is. I mean,
I
he's
probably get a lot of requests though. Hey,
endless,
yeah,
endless,
and
endless.
it's pretty good to respond to all my emails. Like we had an ongoing
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
conversation about his movements. All right, so we've got a question here from Matt McLeod. Hey Matt, hope you're doing well, mate, and thanks for jumping on, leaving a question. He's asked here about the ways that you've simplified your life throughout your 30s. What ways have you pushed or expanded? Also curious on what lessons or principles you've been returning to or relearning more and more recently. So
Slowing down.
how have you simplified your life at your 30s?
Yeah. Slowing down. That'd be my big answer. I've decided I've come to a philosophy. So there was one point in my career, Matt, where I was doing supplements, I was doing coaching, I had a team of athletes, I was traveling, where I was just there's one point in my career where I was doing so much, and though the feedback that I got from everyone was positive and the feedback from the world said you're crushing it, bro, I look up to you and blah blah blah. I personally didn't like it. My life was in a bit of disarray. I found that for me personally, it's better to do one stroke perfectly than 20 strokes mediocre, right? I think it's worth its weight in gold when you can say, I'm going to do this one thing and hold on this one skill extremely well and really slow down and make sure that I do the quality of it. And I think for twofold. One, the returns that you get on a well-groomed product, right? It's like you're doing this one podcast and you're not trying to do three other podcasts for three other people, right? You're splitting the difference here. And so if you can do one thing really well, everything you need will grow out from the opportunities of that one thing you do really well. There will be no need to try to create a million things, right? Just do that one thing better than anybody can do it, whatever that gift may be for you. And two, slow down as you do it. You know, every day is another day closer to our death. Slow down, enjoy it, put the brakes on it if you can. You know, double check the work, triple check the work. Really live and thrive in what you're doing and love what you're doing and live with the result. I'm playing. I've been learning to play a little guitar, and one of the things that I learned from the Romero brothers are like the greatest classical guitar players ever, and they talk about tone. You know, a lot of the sound of a guitar comes from the fingers and how you touch the guitar. And they say, think of every stroke or every strum as a golden arrow. And once that arrow goes out, it's out into the universe. You can't get it back, right? And that's why I try to think about how I do that one thing that I'm really good at is do that one thing with as much quality and it'll speak for you. That one thing will be like how do I say it? It's like you can make 1,000 videos, but if that one goes viral, that's the one you need. And that's sort of the idea with work as well too. Sometimes you do that one thing really well, and it's Pareto principle, right? So 80% of the inputs come from 20%. 80% of the results come from 20% of the inputs. So it's always the less that creates the more. So slow down, do less, and do that less thing like like Ronnie did it. Ronnie didn't do much but bodybuilding. That's all he did. That's all he ever did.
Oh, didn't he? During a cut, so this is Ash. Thanks, Ash, for your question. During a cut, do you think there is any benefit if you bring your calories up to maintenance for a week or two and then going back into a deficit, even though you're progressing and you're not feeling run down or like you need a diet break? I've been in a moderate deficit, losing slowly for about 4 months, considering a diet break, even though I feel pretty good. Do you think it could potentially hinder my progress?
I think it comes back to that concept, you know. What do you need? What
Yeah.
do you want, right? There that you have to sort of answer for what the spirit calls
A
it
lot of the
for
research tends to say like the psychological benefit of a diet break. So if, yeah,
you took the words out of my mouth. That's literally it. And then I think also is it a diet break that you're craving at maintenance, or do you just want a straight up week and Sandro Pay Cabo just going to eat buffet style, right? Like there's a difference. And if do the one that you want. So for me, I think progress only exists when the mind is satisfied. There's no point. and pushing relentlessly just to prove a point. We're all mature enough, at least in this practice, if you're asking a question that advanced, that you can take a week and chances are your muscles will probably be better for it. We all know how this goes when you take a diet break and you kind of upregulate some of those hormones. You're better off for it. You feel better. You're more full, right? You're more saturated. Your muscles are more saturated and full again. So it can have some benefits. So I think the question is, do do you want to, right? And it seems like if you're asking that, then yeah, if it's on your mind, then do it. There's no wrong way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. For example, I've been on a cut this year. I started this year 223. I'm down to 208, and that's taken me 10 months and 15 days, just to lose that little bit of weight. So there's no wrong way. I took the summer off during this cut. I took 5 weeks off during the summer and just did whatever I wanted for 5 weeks. So there's no wrong answers. There's no wrong answers. And I think a lot of people think structurally within the realm of competitive things, but expand. There's no wrong answers. There's no wrong answers. So yes, if it's on your mind, no, if you just want to fucking blast on and make this progress and hurry up and get there, then don't stop. Stop for what?
Mm.
Stop for what? So do
Guess
what
it depends if you want to
satisfies.
crush the comp or you're more,
Absolutely, absolutely. I
a
think
little
the
bit
thing that
more.
I'm bringing forward is autonomy, right? That's my whole thing in forward is just what do you want? There's so much hiding behind, waiting for someone to tell you what to do, but the best just don't think. And Michael Jordan just went out there and balled them up, didn't think about it,
Yeah.
So
What are two things that make dieting and losing weight hard for most people? What are some of the things that challenge
oh,
you most, do you think?
um, having to live in a different state of motivation to go back to the Maslow stuff. I think that's a big thing, right? Like there's a lot of dog owners, right? And people know that dogs are very food motivated. If you ever, put a steak in front of a dog, it's like, shoo, it's like, it's like following every
Yeah.
and it's very hard for a human to become like a dog and become food motivated again. So I think changing basically that motivation to mostly being food motivated and being hungry and feeling unpleasant and being snappy, right? Your psyche literally changes when you have to lose weight or when you're in a different state. I think that's the hardest part. I think people don't want to give up their perception of how they feel when they're at homeostasis, when they're comfortable. You become a different person. But I will say this, and here's the rub. You don't become just a different person. You become sort of the person that's going to be the proponent for change in your life. You can't do it if you're going to be that same old person. This is the reason why your hormones are doing it, right? Trust anytime a natural process happens in the body, I say trust it. The reason why you're a little more aggressive, the reason why you're a little more angry, the reason why you're a little more after it is because that shit's gonna work for you, dude. It's gonna work. It's that's the reason why your body's doing it. Your body wouldn't put you through any physiological change if it didn't need it, right? You can't be lackluster on energy and slow-minded and comfortable-minded. That's the reason why it uptakes you that way. It's making you a little sharper on the hunt, you can call it, like back in the day. So I would say embrace whatever changes your body goes through and don't say, I liked it better this way or that way. Just trust the process, trust the physiology, trust what the body is doing. It's for millions of years has been doing this, and there must be a reason that it's doing it. So I would say stay present, watch the changes, and just let it happen, right? Sometimes I'm angry, but I don't have to go, get a knife and start slashing people in the street. I just say I'm angry, and that's okay. Sometimes I'm hungry, and it's okay. And just be whatever you are and let the process roll. You don't have to act out on the changes or how you feel or become a new character of hunger. You can just sort of sit back and watch it flow. Just sort of be in the background as it's happening because it's going to happen whether you're in a coma or not, whether you're in if you're in a deficit in a coma, it doesn't matter. You're gonna lose weight, right? It doesn't matter if you're conscious or not. This physiology is gonna do what it's gonna do. So that's kind of always been my thinking of it. It's just let it flow, let it happen. Don't let hunger become you. Be hungry and it's okay, and just have some humility to say, this is my state for the next 6 months, and that's pretty much it. So
Jackson's asked, how do you progressively overload smaller muscle groups like the deltoids when you can't add,
Mm,
like, say, for instance, like a cable lateral raise, or, it's hard to put 20, 30 kilos on and start.
big time. Frequency, that'd be my number one answer, right? Like, it's very okay to do, let's say you're stuck on lateral raises at 20 pounds, they're tight, and then at 30 pounds, they look like, they look fucking crazy. Or 25 pounds, they even look crazy. I would say don't change the weight, right? You can do amazing things with saying, I'm just going to do these twice in my microcycle, whenever that is, 7 days, 10 days, however you split up your programming. So frequency is big for one. And two, I think technique is huge in
Yeah.
making sure that you're trying to cater to those small parts, right? Sometimes it may not even be in the frequency or in the weight. You can just perform it better.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds very general and kind of bro-ish, but if you really think about how muscles work, I mean, they are recruiting. I couldn't tell you how many muscle cells they're trying to recruit all at once. I mean, it's so many
Yeah.
muscle cells in each bundle, it's an unbelievable amount. And my thing is slow down and try to really imagine yourself in a mind muscle connection, firing every single fiber in that muscle and trying to get as much quality in that rep as you can. And once you can really get it perfect, then do it twice a week. And then naturally the way progressive overload works is one day you'll show up and it'll be easy. That's why the idea of progressive overload is what it is that it progressively just sort of naturally has a response. It's nothing that you have to find or push or do yourself. But naturally you'll also find too, like, okay, come on, like how heavy do you want to go on a lateral raise, right? To what degree do you stop? Do you want to say I'm not going to stop until I do the 150s? At some point for the rest of your life, you're going to be stuck on the 40s. And we all sort of just have to live with that and find new ways to do it and find new variations to do it and find new angles to do it. So that'd be my thing. It'd be do all the pieces you can. And sometimes when you talk about progressive overload, it's not necessarily just about training, is how good is your recovery, how good are all the pieces. And so I know what I'm saying here is very complex, and that's the beauty of it. It's going to take you 5 years to find out what I just said, right? Though I said it in a minute's time, it'll take years to figure this out. It'll take years and years and years to figure this out. And that's sort of the beauty of the method. It's very simple in what we do, but the complexity and in the detail in it is takes time. So go light, go heavy, get more frequent, try it all. Try everything. Try what works for you. I remember the first time I had a conversation with Doug Miller, and he said, I remember the first time I saw Doug Miller, he was doing like 30, 40 reps of deadlifts or something like that. It was out of the rules, It was just unbelievable. It was just nothing that should make sense, but
Like 40
it's boring.
reps. Yeah.
That yes, yes, yes. Unbelievable,
So what's
unbelievable.
your take on the best rep ranges to build muscle tissue? And then,
Whatever your skeleton can handle,
yeah,
probably for that first portion, right?
that's
If
something that
you
a lot of people ask, right? Is says, what's the best training split? How often should you change it? Ideal rep ranges, sets.
Yep. Whatever your skeleton can handle. I've been watching. Okay, so I've been keep bringing this example up. I've been playing a lot of guitar lately, and I hear what people say about guitar, and I hear the techniques that you should do and this, and then you go watch a video of Jimi Hendrix. It's like, well, what technique is out the window? This guy's playing with his teeth. You know what I mean? What do you mean?
Look at
This guy.
Sam
Yeah,
Swek, and
right, right.
success lady blues though.
And so I think that's the thing, right? People Scientists, and you know this, scientists are not the beacon of all knowledge. They are the beacon of what we know so far up until this point today, right now, right? After we die, the knowledge will continue to be evolving. Every now and then, you'll see something in our lifetime that doesn't fit our rules, right? It's no different than crazy example, right? If 100 years ago, if I were drinking out of the wrong water fountain here in the United States, it'd be crazy, right? It'd be like that's something you don't see every day. But over time, things change and rules change, and what we're allowed to do, kind of progressively changes. So I would say there is no such thing as at best anything. The game is this: it's add stimulus, watch response. add stimulus, watch response. And every single one of us is different. Currently, right now in my life, 15s and 12s have been my favorite reps, up to 20 sometimes. When I was younger, I've had powerlifting phases, sixes, fives, fours. It depends on where you're at and how you want to train and where your mind is. And the truth is, volume equated, it all kind of works, right? Muscles are quite dynamic. Let us not put a definition on what the muscle can do. Muscles can shrink, muscles can grow, muscles can atrophy, muscles are amazing. They're amazing. So what do we know, right? Try it out. Give it a shot. Don't be afraid to say for my delts, I like going 15 to 20, and for my chest, for some reason, I make a great connection at fives. And then so there's no rules. There's no rules. There's things that you don't do, right? You don't hyperextend your elbow. There's certain things you don't do, and we know those, but don't be afraid to try it all. You'd be surprised at some of the people I've competed with. The last competition I did, I competed with this guy. He just got out of Rikers Island prison after like 7 years,
Heard
dude.
this. Yeah, I heard this. Crazy.
It was unbelievable. I don't know how he did it. No protein. I just couldn't wrap my head around it, right? But it's the same idea when you go back and you look at see what those cavemen did. It's like, how did you guys do this? With no nothing, with enough
And I'd love
time.
to get that guy on this podcast. Do you know of him or any?
I know of him.
Let's get
I
him on.
know. I know him really well. He is, and I remember he looked at me right before we got on stage and he said the most, he looked at me in my eyes. He said, win, lose, or draw, we in the building. And I said, oh, yeah, dude, he's so right. He's so right. But this guy has a very interesting story. Obviously, if you can contact me, I'll let him talk to you for himself. But it's an inspiring story. I've always been very fascinated with men who have gone to prison and come out revolutionized, right? The first great story about this I heard was Nelson Mandela, let's say, right? Like I've always been very fascinated with these stories where people who can go from these crazy strongholds and somehow come out. It's fascinating. So, but that's the thing, you'll see it done. And so that's the thing, right? For all the scientific papers and things that we have, where is the research for the prisoner who beat me that day? Where's the data on that? He beat me. How'd that happen? How is that possible? And I think that's the thing about being a Homo sapien. We're adaptable beyond means that you would never believe, right? So don't constrain yourself. We know what works. Resistance works. We know what works. Nutrition works, but try it. Try anything. I don't know what that guy tried in prison, but it worked enough to beat the Natty Pro. I'll tell you that. It worked. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. It's really unbelievable. So, yeah, I can send you his info. He's still around. So he's just competed actually, just I think 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. WNWMBF show on the East Coast. Yeah.
I think his story will probably be more suited to the Normless podcast, be less the norm. The other podcasts I do, which is like more based around just general human beings that are achieving crazy things. Like there was one guy we had on who ran across Australia, a group of guys that cycled all around Australia,
Right.
a couple of guys that were bank robbers in prison for 20, 30 years, and then they came out and they've reformed, like you said there. But I think he'd be a candidate for that podcast as well.
I'll send him. I'll send you his info, his Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ryan. It's been a pleasure, mate, and I really appreciate you giving up your time today.
Of course.
Mate, I really loved chatting, and we'll chat again soon.
Thank you, my brother. Appreciate it. We'll get on again.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Strength Connect podcast. If you enjoyed listening, please don't forget to rate the podcast, or alternatively, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips from each episode. You can also follow us on all social media platforms using the handle @StrengthConnect.